Midas was a Phrygian king known for his ability to turn anything he touched into gold, a power that became known as the Midas touch. This ability made him famous throughout the land, and legends surrounding him and his father Gordius placed them in the 2nd millennium BC, long before the Trojan War. Despite this, they were not mentioned by Homer, who instead highlighted other Phrygian kings, Mygdon and Otreus. The city of Mydium in Phrygia was presumably named after King Midas, and he might have founded Ancyra, as suggested by Pausanias. In the late 8th century BC, another king Midas, who was considered to be the same person as Midas, king of the Mushki mentioned in Assyrian texts, ruled Phrygia. Historical accounts indicate that he warred with Assyria and its Anatolian provinces during the same period. Herodotus recounts a third Midas, who was a member of the Phrygian royal house in the 6th century BC. This Midas had various legendary exploits, including the story of him having donkey ears for his love of music and his encounter with the god Dionysus. All three Midas left their marks in Phrygian history, becoming an integral part of the rich tapestry of Greek and Anatolian mythology. King Midas was one of the most fascinating yet mysterious figures in ancient Greece, surrounded by contradictions and legends that seemed to contradict each other. There were numerous accounts of his birth and upbringing, but one of the most popular stories suggested that he was adopted as a child by King Gordias and Cybele, the goddess mother of Midas himself. However, there were other sources claiming that he was born and raised in Macedonian Bermaion or Thracian Mygdonia. Despite the confusion surrounding his childhood, many tales of his life revolved around his reign as king of Phrygia. According to a story from Arrian, Midas was the son of a poor peasant and a Telmician maiden of the prophetic race. When the Phrygians were in the midst of a civil conflict, a prophecy foretold a wagon would bring them their future king. Midas and his parents arrived in a wagon, and the Phrygians chose him as their king. Midas managed to end their discord and dedicated his father's wagon to Zeus the king. Even more interestingly, the myth tells us that whoever was able to loosen the cord of the yoke of this wagon was destined to rule Asia. This turned out to be Alexander the Great in some versions of the tale, adding even more intrigue to the legend of King Midas. Herodotus also mentioned a Midas son of Gordias, who made an offering to the oracle of Delphi of a royal throne that was, well worth seeing. Some believe that Gordias may have donated this throne, but others argue that it was the later King Midas, the great-grandfather of Aliates of Lydia. This Midas amassed a significant amount of wealth from inventing taxable coinage and was sometimes referred to as the Golden King. Regardless of the different legends and versions of Midas' life, one thing remained clear: he was a fascinating and enigmatic figure whose stories and myths continue to captivate audiences to this day. Dionysus had been searching high and low for his dear old friend and schoolmaster, the satyr Silenus. Finally, he heard whispers of a group of Phrygian peasants who had found him wandering in a drunken stupor. They had taken him to their king, Midas, who was entertaining Silenus and his friends with great pomp and splendor for 10 whole days. Overjoyed to hear that his friend was safe and sound, Dionysus went to visit Midas and thank him for taking care of Silenus. As a token of his gratitude, Dionysus offered Midas any reward he desired. Without hesitation, Midas asked that anything he touched would turn to gold. Delighted by the unique request, Dionysus granted his wish. Eager to test his newfound power, Midas set about touching anything and everything he could lay his hands on: oak twigs, stones, and even roses in his garden, all of which turned to glittering gold. But as Midas tried to enjoy his newfound wealth, he soon found that he was cursed. Even his food and drink turned to gold in his hands, leaving him starving and desperate. His beloved daughter came to him in tears, as the flowers she loved so much were now hard and scentless. And when Midas tried to comfort her, he inadvertently turned her to gold. Overcome with fear and regret, Midas prayed to Dionysus, who instructed him to bathe in the river Pactolus. When he did, anything he touched thereafter would be restored to its true form. As thanks to the river, the sands beneath the water began to shine with gold and electrum, making it the richest river in all the land. Despite his salvation, Midas never found peace. According to Aristotle, he eventually died of starvation due to his vain prayer for the gold touch. But his story lives on as a cautionary tale of greed and the dangers of chasing wealth at any cost. Midas was once a rich and powerful ruler, but grew to hate his wealth and moved to the countryside to worship Pan, the god of fields and satyrs. Midas's tutor in music was Orpheus, according to Roman mythographers. One day, Pan dared to compare his music with that of Apollo and challenged him to a contest judged by Midas, the mountain god. Pan played on his pipes with his rustic melody, while Apollo struck the strings of his lyre. Midas declared Apollo as the winner, but Midas did not agree and questioned it. Angry Apollo cursed Midas's ears to become those of a donkey, and the king was mortified. Midas hid his donkey ears beneath an ample turban, but his barber knew the truth and whispered it into a hole he dug. A bed of reeds grew on the spot and began whispering about Midas's ears. Fearing that his secret would be revealed, Midas killed his barber. However, the reeds continued to whisper, and the secret eventually spread. According to some sources, King Midas killed himself by drinking ox blood as a result of his shame. Interestingly, donkeys' ears were a symbol of royalty in the Bronze Age, and King Tarkasnawa of Myra bore them on a seal. This myth validated this exotic attribute for Greeks. There are similar stories of kings with donkey ears in other cultures. In the pre-Islamic legend of Central Asia, the king of the Ausuns of the Yenisei Basin had donkey's ears and hid them by murdering his barbers. In Ireland, the king Labraid Loingsek also had horse/donkey's ears and killed his barbers until a widow saved her son by asking him to keep the secret. In Brittany, King Mark of Cornwall was cursed by a magician Dahat who swapped his ears and hair with his horse Morvarcage. He killed every barber that came to cut his hair until his milk brother Yun used magical scissors and buried the secret.
Do you want to explore more Greek mythology stories? Who do you want to see featured next? Subscribe and leave a comment below to let me know. I'll see you in the next video.